Det var vi en WhatsApp och till elsen försöker slå fram till med bilen av sig. Jag vet inte på vilken men det är för så det sa vi det ser. Oh shit, I must have been inverted. You never heard a word I said, did you? Basically, what I said was, the hope for cinema in this global pandemic, Tenet, has finally been released. My thoughts on Christopher Nolan's latest blockbuster coming at you right after this. So now then, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a smashing day, just like myself. Sorry this review's taken so long to get to your sub boxes. There's some family stuff going on that I don't really want to talk about. And I've also been recording the most recent episode of the Utopia Project. So without further ado, let's get into my review of Tenet. So Tenet is directed by Christopher Nolan, also written by Christopher Nolan, and stars John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Elizabeth Debicki and Sir Kenneth Branagh in the main roles, with Clements Posey, Himesh Patel, Yuri Kolokov and Sir Michael Caine in supporting roles. And the synopsis is as follows. In a twilight world of international espionage, an unnamed CIA operative, only known as the protagonist, played by John David Washington, is recruited by a mysterious organisation called Tenet to participate in a global assignment that unfolds beyond real time. The mission? Prevent Andrei Sator, played by Sir Kenneth Branagh, a renegade Russian oligarch with precognition abilities, from starting World War III. The protagonist will soon master the art of time inversion as a way of countering the threat that is to come. I actually really enjoyed this film. I don't know if it was because of the fact it's the first film back in the cinema and I would have been happy to go to the cinema to see Boris's first turd on the screen. It could have been anything. I think I would have been happy just to get outside the house, to be totally honest. But to go and see something made by one of the best directors of our generation, I believe. Being a big fan of the Dark Knight trilogy, after only recently seeing Inception as well, which is now in my top 10, 20 films of all time. Going into it, I thought it was going to be kind of a mix of Inception and James Bond. I know Nolan himself has said he's a very big Bond fan, and parts of this film you can tell are his version of Bond, like CIA or secret agent going out there to fight a Russian billionaire who's got too much of a big head and thinks he can rule the world, and trying to stop him from blowing up the world or starting World War III. That pretty much is what this film is. The cast in this is absolutely stellar. Some of the best actors around right now, especially. I really did enjoy John David Washington. The way he plays his character, the protagonist, I thought was really, really good. Robert Pattinson as Neil was really good when the action needed it, as well as being kind of like the comedic relief throughout the film. Obviously, a film made by Nolan isn't going to be a massive comedy. It's not going to be the funniest film of all time, but the odd bit of comedy sprayed in there and the odd funny line you hear all there. It isn't just solely action or just solely one thing. It has like the comedic lines and the comedic timing in it, which somebody like Nolan does tend to sprinkle in there. You don't think of Nolan as this comedic director, you think of him as this serious person, but he does sprinkle the odd bit of comedy in there, especially Bane's voice in The Dark Knight Rises. But let's leave it there. Elizabeth Debicki, who I've only really seen, I believe, in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which she didn't really get much to do in that film. She was kind of like a one-note villain. She was the gold woman, I believe, in that film. So shows how much I actually remember her character. That's how much she got to do. So she was really good in there. I was actually surprised. Michael Caine, you would think from seeing the trailers, he had a pretty big part, but the part that you see in the trailers, that's pretty much it. Kenneth Branagh in this film, along with Robert Pattinson, are the two shining lights from this film. Kenneth Branagh as Andrei Sator, the big Russian villain. So good. He's so intimidating. He's so aggressive. He's such an interesting character. He's the only one that they really give a personality to. He absolutely kills it. I actually really enjoyed his character in this. I thought he was just going to be a boring, one-note villain. He's actually interesting. He has some subtleties to him that you wouldn't actually put on this big Russian oligarch that just wants to destroy the world. And then we obviously have some of the smaller parts of the cast, like Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Honestly, in this film, if they were to ever do a Call of Duty film and they were going to have Captain Price in it, pick this guy. I'll put a picture up on the screen now. But with that beret and that beard / moustache, all in all, he looks just like a young Captain Price from Call of Duty.
126 actual. Target is in the main house. You have execute authority.
Bravo 6. Going dark.
So, Hollywood, do your magic. Aaron Taylor Johnson only comes into it about a third, maybe half of the way through the film. But once him, Robert Pattinson and John David Washington all come together as a triumvirate, I think that's what you say. And I might have pulled that out my arse as well.
Correct!
But as a trio, they are very good together. They bounce off each other well. A lot of the comedic stuff comes between those three interacting. They just seem like three cool guys that you'd want to go down the pub and have a drink with. Clemence Posey was only really in it for like 5 minutes. You see her in the trailer and that's all she does. I also want to talk about the score for this film. Nolan's #1 score composer collaborator is Hans Zimmer, but Hans Zimmer was busy doing both Dune, I believe, and Wonder Woman 84, so he couldn't do it. So the guy that they brought in to replace him, Ludwig Göransson, absolutely killed it. This score is so good. You wouldn't notice the difference. Honestly, you could have thought this was a Zimmer score. He's obviously known for doing the Black Panther score, which I believe he won an Oscar for. He's also known for doing the 2 Creed films and most recently The Mandalorian Season 1. So he's got himself about. You could see certain things he's taken from Creed, from The Mandalorian and from Black Panther that he's kind of fed into this score. Especially Mandalorian, it's very heavy synths and bassy, if you know what I mean. So he's a well-known composer now. He also used to make beats for Childish Gambino and stuff, so he's a very well-rounded musician, and I just thought his score was absolutely fantastic for this. You wouldn't have put it out of place with a Zimmer score at all. And I also I think he put his own little twist on it as well. The whole inversion thing doesn't really come into it until about an hour in, but it's executed, especially with the rest of the stunts, so well. Obviously we know Nolan is such a vocal leader for doing practical physical stunt work rather than doing CGI. You could tell everything's done practically, and it's just such a treat for the eyes when you look at it. It just looks so good. There's a couple of scenes specifically you want to pick out. These aren't really spoilers because you see them in the trailer, but there's one where they crash a plane into a hangar. Actually watch that happen, and from where it starts to where it ends, fantastic. Crashing a 747 into a hangar was just, what more can you ask for? I'd love to have done it myself. There's another scene where a building blows up, inverted, comes back together, and then blows up again. And I have no idea how he did that. I don't know if that's camera trickery, if it's rewinding and then redoing it or whatever. But it's just such a visual treat for the eyes. Later on in the film, Andrei Sator, Kenneth Branagh's character, is having a car chase with Robert Pattinson's Neil and John David Washington's the protagonist. They're driving, having a massive car chase along this open stretch of motorway. And all of a sudden you see this car flipped up. And you know something's about to happen, but you don't know what it is until it hits you. And just as it hits you, this car goes, whoop, flips up and starts driving backwards towards these lot, and you can kind of tell this car's inverted, but you don't know who's in it. You later find out. Also, the other thing with this as well, it does very much look like a lot of other Nolan's films. It is very dark, very blue, very dark colour paletted. It looks a lot like Inception. This is why I think a lot of people thought Tenet was going to be an Inception sequel, because it looks very much the same. They kind of have the same premise. A group of people trying to mess around with time, space, reality, like type of thing. It does kind of feel like Inception. I absolutely love this film. I don't think it's the best though. I do have a couple of negatives. I kind of touched on this on my Instagram when I do my first live reactions directly at the cinemas. Although I love the score in this and I love the sound effects, there's a couple of scenes, specifically there's one with Neil and the protagonist and they're talking and they're in this crowded like street and you could just hear people talking and the score playing over the top, and he's put the dialogue underneath all that in the audio mix, so you can literally hear all the explosions and everything, but the voice is muffled and you can't hear anything. And in a plot so intricate and full of information, you need to learn this information, but you can't hear it through the dialogue because the dialogue's always overimposed by the ginormous score and the sound effects and everything else. So it kind of gets hard to hear, especially. I think there's some integral bits of plot information and the way Inversion works in the dialogue, but you can't hear it because you've got this fucking ginormous score and sound effects and everything all over the top that you just go, hey, I can't hear it. Can you like turn the music down, please? This is kind of going to be a demonstration of how it works just here. So yeah, so this is what it kind of sounds like. This is yeah, there were a couple of other negatives as well. Although the acting was stellar in this, I do think there wasn't a lot of characterisation in this. There's a couple of times in this film where they try and make you feel for certain characters, and I just don't think it works because there isn't a lot of characterisation. Like, the protagonist is just called the protagonist. How can you feel for him in certain aspects and areas when he's just called the protagonist? You ain't even giving him a name, and you don't really build him up as a person. You just kind of, this is the guy, this is what he does, this is the job he does, let him get on with it. The only one it really works for is Elizabeth Debicki's character, Kat, because she is the wife of Kenneth Branagh's Sator, and you can see how aggressive and arrogant and over the top and imposing he is, and you start to feel sorry for her. But that's because of how good the writing is for Kenneth Branagh, not because of how good the writing is for Kat. It's because he's so good that it just kind of automatically, without having to do much, makes you feel for her. She is kind of like the damsel in distress in this film, and it is very cliche in certain parts. Well, we don't really get a lot of backstory or a lot of information about these characters, which is, if that's the story you want to tell, fair enough, but you can't then halfway through the film try and make us care for like some person when something happens to them. So how can they expect us to care for certain characters when they're going through stuff if there was no emotional connection built up between us and these characters in this film, for us to actually care when they die or when something bad happens to them? Honestly, it's just bad script writing. Shame on you, Nolan. You should know better than that. He still managed to get that through with people like Cobb and Ariadne and Tom Hardy's character, who I can't remember off the top of my head, from Inception. So he's done it before, he'll do it again. It's just poor script writing from himself. I know he gets a lot of help from his brother Jonathan Nolan. Maybe he could have done with that little bit of extra help in this film. We'll never know. And last but not least, I do think it's pretty slow to get into it. First hour is very much trying to introduce the plot and trying to like get you in this world before it actually goes into Inversion and tries to get you to know all this stuff. I think if they'd spent all this time setting up the world and just set up the Inversion and all the time shenanigans from the start, it would be a lot better film, because it is very slow and it takes its time and builds it up slowly but slowly at the beginning, whereas it just got straight into it like he does with a lot of films like Inception and The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight's like straight from the start, you're in it. Whereas this takes its time and builds itself up, and I don't think it needed that. But yeah, overall, that's pretty much all my thoughts on Tenet. If you want to get out and see it, or you're on the fence and a little bit worried because COVID is still a thing and you don't feel like you'll be safe when you're out there, I would push yourself to go and see this. I do think you'd enjoy it, as long as you can focus to try and understand through some of the over-the-top audio. I think you would really enjoy it. So my rating for this film is going to be an 8 out of 10. So if you've seen Tenet, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you thought. Did you think it was a good film? If you haven't seen it yet, are you excited to see it? Is this going to push you out to see it? Like with a lot of Nolan's films, there's a lot of like theories about who certain characters are and stuff like that. Bang your finest like theories for Tenet down in the description. Is it still a backdoor Inception sequel? let me know down in the description. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that ends today's review. I hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget, as always, to hit the like button and subscribe. And follow me on all my socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They're all popping up on screen now and all down in the description. Especially Instagram, because that's where I post my first reactions after coming out of the cinema, after seeing films like this. And all the upcoming films like Wonder Woman, Death on the Nile, things like that. My first reactions, as soon as I come out of the cinema, all on my Instagram. And also, finally, a brand new platform for myself, Twitch. Hopefully, in between these reviews and videos I put up on YouTube, I'd like to start streaming some games to Twitch. Things like COD, FIFA, Fall Guys, anything like that. So if you want to check that out, go over to my Twitch channel, which will be showing up on the screen down here somewhere. And also will be down in the description. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, with all that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. And I shall see you in the next video. Goodbye.